Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there is um, this comforting expectation of precision, right? Like it feels almost like engineering.
Oh, absolutely. It's very cut and dry.
Yeah, like if you fall and break your arm, you go to the hospital, they put you in an x-ray machine, and that film shows a very clear, jagged white line across the bone.
Right. There is no ambiguity there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The doctor just points a finger at the screen and says, well, there it is. That's the problem.
It's completely binary, Like the bone is broken or the bone is intact. The visual evidence is undeniable.
Undeniable, yeah.
And the path to fixing it, like putting it in a cast, is universally understood.
Yeah.
I mean, we naturally crave that kind of clarity when something is causing us pain.
We really do.
Yeah.
But then you step out of the hospital and into the real world, into the world of organizational dynamics.
Oh, boy, yeah. That's a whole different story.
It really is. You walk into a corporate office, you look at team structures, software delivery pipelines, and management hierarchies, and suddenly you realize that the corporate x-ray machine is fundamentally broken.
That's a great way to put it. The machine just doesn't work.
Right. We find ourselves trying to diagnose a landscape that is incredibly murky. And I think everyone listening to this deep dive can relate to this specific scenario.
Oh, definitely.
Like, have you ever worked at a place that did everything strictly by the book? I mean, they followed all the industry rules. They held all the mandatory meetings.
They mandated all the right buzzwords on every email.
Yes, exactly. But the day-to-day reality of actually trying to get a project over the finish line still felt completely agonizingly broken.
Yeah, it's the absolute definition of diagnostic muddy waters, really, because if an outsider comes in and looks at the surface of a company like that, I mean, the organizational chart appears perfectly symmetrical.
Oh, it's beautiful on paper.
Right. The team calendars are full of collaborative touch points, strategy sessions, the software tools are top tier. But underneath that shiny surface, the patient, meaning the company culture, and the actual output is essentially suffocating.
Suffocating, wow.
And because the surface looks so good, leadership often just flat out refuses to acknowledge the suffocation.
And that invisible suffocation is exactly what we're unpacking in today's deep dive. So, welcome everyone. I'm your host, and I'm joined by our resident expert to really tear into this.
Glad to be here as always. We've got some wild stuff to cover today.
We really do. We are looking at a truly fascinating set of source materials today, centered around a document called Case 1, the case of the missing Agile mindset.
Which is such a great title.
It is. Now, what makes this deep dive so incredibly unique is the format. We are not staring down a dry 300-page Harvard Business Review white paper on corporate synergy.
Thankfully.
Yeah, thankfully. We aren't looking at a spreadsheet of productivity metrics either.
No, we are looking at something entirely different, like totally out of left field.
We really are. We are looking at a set of visual field guides. They are structured almost like a beautifully illustrated comic book, specifically a series called the Agile Myth Mysteries.
Yep.
And I have to admit, when I first opened this up, I had to do a double take.
I don't blame you.
Because our guides through this dense corporate diagnostic landscape are two incredibly cute detective dogs and a magic-wielding wizard.
I know, right? The cast of characters is definitely unexpected. We have Oliver, who is a fluffy dog wearing a classic Sherlock Holmes deerstalker hat.
Which is amazing.
It is, and he holds the official title of Principal Happiness Engineer.
I love that title.
Then we also have Gordon, another detective dog whose title is Senior Flow Engineer. And they are joined by Olga, the Chief Agile Wizard.
So I'm looking at these illustrations, and my initial reaction was, well, a bit of skepticism. Because if you were a serious corporate executive, let's say you manage a massive software division with a $50 million budget and hundreds of employees.
Right, a high-stakes environment.
Exactly. You might look at these sources and think, dogs, wizards, I do not have time for a children's book. We have quarterly earnings to worry about.
Sure, that's the knee-jerk reaction.
But I suspect there is a very deliberate reason this format was chosen to address heavy topics like missing mindsets and broken software delivery.
Oh, absolutely. It's actually a brilliant psychological tactic, because when you present professionals with a dense academic textbook explaining why their specific management style is failing, well, their psychological defenses immediately deploy.
Oh yeah, walls go up instantly.
Exactly. They cross their arms. They start looking for flaws in the author's methodology just to protect their own ego. It is entirely human nature to resist criticism when it feels like an attack on your competence.
That makes total sense.
But consider the cognitive dissonance this comic book format intentionally creates. When you present those exact same profound systemic failures through the eyes of Oliver, the fluffy pup looking through a magnifying glass, those ego defenses never trigger.
Wow, that's so true. You can't be mad at the dog.
Right. The vehicle delivering the criticism is entirely non-threatening. It allows a frustrated manager or a burnt-out developer to approach workplace trauma, and bad corporate culture is absolutely a form of trauma, with curiosity instead of defensiveness.
It sneaks the medicine into the cheese.
Yes, perfect analogy.
You are so disarmed by the wizard and the dogs that you suddenly find yourself nodding along to a devastating critique of your own daily stand-up meetings.
Exactly what happens.
And the premise of this specific mystery, this case one, is something I know will resonate with anyone who has ever touched the tech industry or, frankly, any modern corporate bureaucracy.
Oh, for sure. It's universal at this point.
We are going to break down why the so-called Agile mindset is missing in so many fields, how we fundamentally need to change our perception of it, and how to apply a very specific framework, the I.M.P.A.C.T.A. human behavior model, to actually fix the suffocation we talked about.
And I want to highlight the terminology you just read from the source there. It explicitly calls I.M.P.A.C.T.A. a human behavior model.
Right. Not a software thing.
Exactly. It does not call it a software deployment pipeline or a project management algorithm. That distinction tells us right away that the root of the problem isn't the code being written or the software tools being used. The root of the problem is human interaction.
Okay, so before we can solve the mystery alongside Oliver and Gordon, we have to thoroughly understand the crime scene.
We need to see the body, so to speak.
Yeah, we have to look at the illusion of doing Agile. The sources start by outlining a specific myth that has infected the business world. And the myth is written out very clearly. It says, Agile is just Scrum, Kanban, stand-ups, and sticky notes.
Which is such a trap.
It is. But before we analyze why that is a myth, I think we need to define those terms for anyone listening who might not speak fluent Silicon Valley jargon. What are we actually talking about here?
Yeah, that is a crucial baseline to establish. Let's strip away the jargon completely. The word agile originally started decades ago as a philosophy.
Just the philosophy.
Yeah, it was a manifesto written by software developers who were just exhausted by bloated, rigid development cycles that took years to complete, only to deliver software the customer no longer even wanted.
Because the world moved on.
Exactly. So they proposed a more flexible, iterative philosophy. But over time, the corporate world took that philosophy and tried to formalize it into rigid systems.
Because corporations love systems.
They do. So Scrum is one of those systems. It's a framework for organizing work into short, time-boxed bursts called sprints, usually lasting about 2 weeks.
Okay.
Kanban is a visual management tool. Think of a giant whiteboard with columns labeled to do, doing, and done, with tasks represented by sticky notes moving across the board.
I think we've all seen those boards, yeah.
Right. And stand-ups are just daily 15-minute huddle meetings where the team states what they did yesterday and what they're doing today.
So these are basically just organizational mechanisms, tools and meeting structures.
Nothing more.
And reading this, a completely different scenario popped into my head. Yeah, imagine someone deciding they want to become a marathon runner. They go out and buy the most expensive carbon-plated running shoes on the market.
Oh, I see where this is going.
They purchase the aerodynamic, moisture-wicking shirts. They buy a $600 smartwatch that tracks their heart rate, their VO2 max, their sleep cycles.
A whole 9 yards.
The whole kit. They put all this gear on every single morning. They walk around their house in it. They post a picture of their outfit on social media. And then they just sit on the couch.
Classic.
Right. 6 months later, they show up to run the actual marathon, and they collapse after the first mile. And they're standing there on the side of the road, completely bewildered, yelling, "But I bought the shoes. I wore the moisture-wicking shirt. I synced my smartwatch. Why am I not a marathon runner?"
That analogy captures the delusion perfectly. The person on the couch has confused the artifacts of an activity with the execution of the activity.
Artifacts, yeah.
They genuinely believe that possessing the tools magically grants them the capability.
You are confusing process compliance with actual progress. And that is exactly what our detective dogs find when they arrive at the crime scene in the source material.
It's a mess.
It is. The text describes a company that executes every Agile ceremony flawlessly. They hold the daily stand-up meetings every morning at 9 a.m. sharp. They do the sprint planning meticulously.
They check every box.
Every single one. They have digital Kanban boards with hundreds of beautifully color-coded sticky notes. They bought all the expensive workout gear, and they are wearing it every day.
Yet, when Oliver looks at the actual state of the company, the symptoms listed below that perfect checklist are disastrous.
Just terrible.
The source lists 3 primary symptoms at this crime scene. First, customers are unhappy. Second, teams are exhausted. Third, managers are frustrated.
Which is the holy trinity of corporate failure.
It really is. This creates the central paradox of the mystery. The question echoing through the halls of this hypothetical company is, if we're doing Agile, why isn't it working?
Consider what this means for the people trapped inside that system. They are doing everything their bosses tell them is correct, yet the outcome is universal misery. Why does strict adherence to these tools lead directly to team burnout?
Well, when a company adopts the ceremonies like the daily stand-ups and the sticky notes, without adopting the underlying philosophy of adaptability and trust, they essentially just add more administrative burden to an already stressed system.
There's just more paperwork.
Basically, yeah. Let's examine the exhausted team's symptom. Imagine you work in a traditional, top-down, command and control corporate culture where management dictates every move.
Okay, pretty common.
If leadership suddenly forces the team to hold a daily 15-minute stand-up meeting under the guise of being agile, they haven't empowered the team. They have simply created a daily micromanagement session where developers are forced to publicly justify their existence every single morning.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's rough.
It weaponizes the tool.
It turns a collaborative huddle into a daily status report driven by fear. I can absolutely see why that would drain the energy out of a team instantly.
Right. And look at the frustrated manager symptom. The managers are staring at a Kanban board full of moving sticky notes thinking, look at all this activity. We are moving tickets from doing to done at record speed. We must be producing massive value.
But activity does not equal value.
Exactly. You can write code and move sticky notes all day long, but if the product you are building doesn't actually solve the customer's real-world problem, the customer remains unhappy. The factory machinery is humming beautifully, the gears are perfectly lubricated, but the factory is producing absolute garbage.
It's a great image.
And when someone finally points out that the product is garbage, the management just points to the humming machinery and says, but the machine is operating exactly to spec.
If the process is executing perfectly, but the human outcome is miserable, where do you even begin to untangle the mess? I mean, the machine is blind to its own failure.
It really is.
That brings us to Oliver's investigation. Our principal happiness engineer puts his magnifying glass over the team's behavior and notices a fundamental disconnect. The source text reveals his observation. They're following a recipe without understanding the purpose.
The recipe trap. This is a profound diagnostic observation masked in a very simple domestic metaphor.
So I am going to push back on Oliver just a little bit here.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because I think a lot of managers would take issue with this. Generally speaking, isn't a recipe supposed to guarantee a successful result?
Well, in the kitchen, yes.
Right. If I want to bake a chocolate cake, I find a recipe from a master pastry chef. I measure exactly 2 cups of flour, 1 cup of cocoa powder, a pinch of salt. I put it in the oven at 350 degrees for exactly 30 minutes. If I follow that recipe with 0 deviations, I get a delicious cake.
You do.
I don't really need to understand the molecular chemistry of baking powder to get a good result. So why doesn't strict recipe following work for software delivery? Why can't a manager just hand down a master recipe?
That pushback gets to the absolute core of why so many corporate transformations fail. The reason the recipe works for your chocolate cake is that baking is a deterministic process.
Deterministic, okay.
Yeah, it relies on the immutable laws of chemistry and physics. Flour, sugar, and heat will react the same way today as they did 50 years ago. Furthermore, the environment inside your oven is a closed, perfectly controlled system. Nothing unexpected is going to happen in there.
Chemistry doesn't suddenly change its mind halfway through the baking process and decide it wants to be a casserole.
Exactly the point. But software delivery, product development, knowledge work, these are not closed, deterministic systems. They are highly complex, adaptive systems.
It's a whole different ballgame.
Right. You are not dealing with flour and sugar. You are dealing with the messy realities of human psychology, rapidly shifting market conditions, emerging technologies that break yesterday's code, and competitors who are actively trying to outmaneuver you.
Yeah, an oven doesn't have competitors.
Exactly. If management treats software development like baking a cake, they're operating under the delusion that they know exactly what the customer wants on day one and that the customer's desires will not change 1 millimeter over the 6 months it takes to build the product.
Which, in the modern economy, is virtually impossible. I mean, a competitor might launch a rival product 3 months into your development cycle, completely changing what your customer expects.
The environment is entirely unpredictable. A recipe is inherently blind to a changing environment. Look at the vital, missing questions floating around Oliver's head in the illustration as he watches people blindly follow the corporate recipe.
What does he ask?
He asks, why are we building this? What problem are we solving? What did we learn? How can we improve? A recipe never asks those questions.
No, it doesn't.
A cake recipe doesn't pause you at minute 15 and ask, wait, does the person eating this actually want a cherry pie instead? Did we learn yesterday that they are allergic to chocolate? A recipe assumes the goal is fixed and the method is infallible.
Oliver is showing us that in business, the goal is always a moving target, and the method has to constantly adapt to hit it. If you are just blindly following the steps, you will hit the original target, only to realize the customer moved to a different city.
This leads directly to the crucial piece of evidence that Gordon, the senior flow engineer, uncovers at the crime scene.
The notebook.
Yes, he sniffs out an old, dusty notebook containing the foundational truth that this corporate world has completely forgotten. The text in the notebook reads, Agile was never designed to help people follow a process. It was designed to help people think differently.
Let me just sit with that for a second, because it really acts as the fulcrum for this entire deep dive. Agile was never designed to help people follow a process. It was designed to help people think differently.
It's powerful.
It is almost tragic how far modern corporate execution has drifted from that original human-centric intention. We took a philosophy about dynamic human thought, collaboration, and adapting to change, and we shoved it into a standardized, rigid checklist. We stripped the humanity out of it to make it easier to measure on a spreadsheet.
We commodified the output while completely ignoring the internal human mechanism required to create it. We basically tried to automate thinking.
And if Gordon's clue tells us we need to think differently, that requires a shift in reality, which brings us perfectly to the entrance of Olga the Wizard.
Ah, yes, the wizard.
We need a magical reveal of what is actually missing in this mystery. And the imagery used in the source here is quite striking. A lavender butterfly lands gently on the old notebook Gordon found. Olga waves her wand, and that butterfly transforms into a single glowing word: mindset.
Mindset, the elusive missing element that explains the entire paradox of Case 1.
Olga smiles at the detective dogs and delivers a line that frankly belongs on a plaque in every boardroom. She says, processes tell you what to do. A mindset changes how you think.
We really need to analyze the immense psychological depth of that distinction. Let's break down the difference between those two states of being within a workplace.
Okay, let's do it.
A process is entirely external. It is imposed upon an employee from the outside. It is a set of boundaries, rules, and instructions handed down from a hierarchy. A process organizes the mechanics of the work, like the sequence of tasks, the location of the digital files, the time of the daily meeting.
Right.
But a process on its own is completely agnostic to the internal human experience of doing the work.
The process doesn't care if you are burnt out, if you are cynical, or if you think the project is doomed to fail, just so long as you move the digital widget to the next column by 5 p.m.
Exactly. A mindset, however, is internal. It is the fundamental cognitive lens through which you view the world, view your colleagues, and view the problems you are trying to solve. You cannot mandate a mindset from the top down.
You can't order someone to care.
Right. A CEO can mandate a daily 9 a.m. meeting, but a CEO cannot mandate curiosity. A manager can mandate that a team fills out a retrospective document at the end of a project, but they cannot mandate psychological safety and genuine vulnerable reflection. A process organizes the work, but only a mindset can transform the people doing the work.
That distinction, organizing work versus transforming people, is massive. And if we look further down at the detective's notebook section of the source, there is this brilliant causal loop mapped out to explain how this actually impacts a company's bottom line.
Oh, that flowchart is great.
It says Agile isn't something you do, Agile is a way you think. And then it provides the chain reaction. When the thinking changes, the behaviors change. When behaviors change, teams become extraordinary.
It maps out a perfect sequential cascade. And it proves that a company cannot leapfrog the difficult internal work of changing how people think.
Which they always try to do.
Always. Many companies try to jump straight to the extraordinary teams phase by attempting to force new behaviors through strict processes. They buy new software tools, they restructure the org chart, they implement mandatory stand-ups.
The marathon gear again?
Yes. But because they haven't done the hard work of changing the thinking, the new behaviors feel completely hollow to the employees. It feels like a corporate performance. The developers are just acting out a play called being agile because they know that's what leadership wants to see, but internally, nothing has changed.
They're putting on the carbon-plated running shoes to show the boss they are a runner, but their mindset is still sitting on the couch eating potato chips.
Exactly. The word agile is not an action, it is a cognitive lens. When you genuinely shift your thinking, when a team truly internalizes the belief that failure is a necessary learning opportunity, that the customer's actual needs matter more than an arbitrary internal timeline, that colleagues deserve the benefit of the doubt, then behaviors will naturally, effortlessly align with those beliefs.
Because the motivation is internal.
Right. You won't need a project manager forcing people to communicate. The team will naturally want to huddle together because they genuinely need each other's expertise to solve a complex puzzle. The behavior becomes a symptom of the mindset rather than a forced compliance.
So understanding that we need a mindset shift is wonderful in theory. It sounds incredibly enlightened. But if I'm a manager listening to this, I'm thinking, great, how do I actually do that?
Right, where are the steps?
How do you structure a totally new way of thinking across a team of diverse individuals, many of whom might be deeply cynical after years of corporate buzzwords? This is where our source material transitions from diagnosing the sickness to prescribing the cure. It provides a North Star to guide this shift in thought. They call it the I.M.P.A.C.T.A. Human Behavior Model.
And I want to reiterate how deliberately the source labels this framework. Right at the top of the page, in bold lettering, it says Human Behavior Model. It does not claim to be a software development framework.
It's about people.
It is. Its stated goal is better thinking, better teams, better organizations. It attacks the problem at the root level of human cognition.
We need to spend significant time unpacking this because these 7 magical principles that make up the acronym I.M.P.A.C.T.A. are the actual mechanic of how you fix the broken X-ray machine we talked about at the start.
Let's dive in.
Let's start with the I. The I stands for Imagine the Customer. The subtitle provided is See the World Through Their Eyes.
If we connect this back to the crime scene symptoms we discussed earlier, this principle is the direct cure for the unhappy customer.
How so?
The traditional corporate mindset focuses relentlessly on internal output metrics. Did we ship the new feature on the date we promised? Did we stay under the quarterly budget? Did we hit our internal key performance indicators?
All about us, not them.
Exactly. In that environment, the customer is just a theoretical distant endpoint for the product. But the imagine the customer mindset forcefully shifts the focus away from mechanical output and toward genuine empathy.
Empathy is a word that rarely makes it into a corporate earnings call. How does a team actually execute empathy when they might never even meet the person buying the software?
It requires changing the definition of success. Empathy means asking, did we actually solve the friction in the user's day? You can ship a feature on time and under budget, perfectly hitting every internal metric. But if that feature makes the user's life more complicated, you have failed the business objective.
Wow, yeah.
Imagining the customer means finding ways to literally sit in their frustration. It means developers reading angry customer support tickets or watching user testing videos where people struggle to navigate the software.
Feeling their pain.
Yes. When a team operates with that kind of deep, visceral empathy, they stopped arguing about internal turf wars or whose code is prettier. They rally around the human being they're trying to help. Success is no longer defined as the code is done. Success is defined as the user's problem is solved.
That reframes the entire purpose of the job. Moving on to the M, make value visible. The subtitle is Show the Work, Build Understanding. Why is visibility considered a mindset rather than just a process of sharing a digital document?
Because hiding work is a deeply ingrained defensive behavior, usually rooted in fear and a lack of psychological trust.
Oh, that makes sense.
In many toxic, highly competitive corporate cultures, knowledge is power. Hoarding information, keeping your projects secret until the final reveal is how some people protect their job security.
The silo mentality.
Exactly. Consequently, teams work in isolated silos. The marketing department has no idea what the engineering department is building, and engineering has no idea what the sales team is promising to clients. This invisibility is the direct cause of the exhausted teams and frustrated managers' symptoms.
Because everyone is constantly running full speed into brick walls they didn't know were there.
Precisely the issue. Managers are pulling their hair out because they cannot see where the bottlenecks are until the deadline is already missed. Teams are exhausted because they are unknowingly duplicating efforts or building systems that are completely incompatible with what another department is doing.
So how does making it visible fix that?
Making value visible, like choosing to show your work early and often, requires massive vulnerability. It requires the mindset of being able to say to your colleagues, here is a messy, half-finished version of what I am doing. Here is where I am stuck. I need your help to fix it.
That's scary in a lot of companies.
It is. But when a team adopts that mindset, they transform from a group of isolated, defensive individuals into a cohesive nervous system where information flows freely and problems are spotted instantly.
The idea of a team operating as a cohesive nervous system is powerful. Let's tackle the P people before process. Subtitle: Empathy, respect, and trust first. I have to play devil's advocate again here.
Bring it on.
People before process sounds lovely for a motivational poster in the break room. But I want to talk about reality. What happens when a massive, high-stakes deadline is looming on a Friday afternoon?
The dreaded Friday deploy.
Yes, the main server is crashing, millions of dollars are on the line, the investors are calling, and the manager just desperately needs the product shipped immediately. In an absolute emergency, isn't falling back on strict process, like a manager stepping in, taking control, and telling everyone exactly what to do step by step, actually much safer than relying on abstract concepts like empathy and trust?
That reaction is the most common trap management falls into during a crisis, and it is entirely backwards.
Really?
Reverting to strict process when a complex system is collapsing is a recipe for catastrophic failure. I want you to imagine a busy intersection in a major city. The process is the traffic light. It tells everyone exactly when to stop and when to go. It works perfectly under ideal, predictable conditions.
Okay, I am picturing the intersection.
Now imagine a citywide blackout. The traffic lights go dark. The process is dead.
Oh.
A crisis is, by definition, unpredictable. The manual does not cover what happens during a blackout. If you rely solely on process, the intersection devolves into chaos and crashes. If a manager tries to step into the middle of that intersection and individually direct every single car, they become a massive bottleneck.
Right, because they can't see everything.
The manager cannot process information fast enough to tell 50 different drivers what to do simultaneously.
The manager is overwhelmed and traffic still backs up for miles.
But if those drivers have a mindset of people before process, what happens? They slow down, they make eye contact with each other, they use human judgment, empathy, and mutual trust to take turns navigating the intersection safely.
The four-way stop approach.
Exactly. They self-organize in real time. If you have spent months cultivating deep trust and psychological safety within your team, they become incredibly resilient during a server crash on a Friday afternoon. They don't freeze and wait for a manager to issue orders.
They just handle it.
They communicate instantaneously, they lean on each other's strengths, and they creatively solve the problem. Process shatters under extreme pressure. Human ingenuity, fueled by trust, thrives under it.
That completely flips the traditional corporate script. The trust is the actual safety net. The process is just the tightrope. If the tightrope snaps during a storm, you better hope you spent the time weaving a strong net of human connection.
That leads perfectly into the second half of the framework. We have established the empathy, the vulnerability of transparency, and the safety net of trust. Now, how does this internal mindset change the physical execution of the daily work?
Let's get into part 2 of the framework. We covered I.M.P. Now we need to unpack A.C.T.A. The first A stands for Act Together. The subtitle is Collaborate and Succeed Together. This seems like the logical output of the trust we just established with the traffic light analogy.
It is the natural progression, and we must contrast Act Together with the reality of many modern workplaces. In highly individualistic, forced-ranking corporate cultures, success is treated as a zero-sum game.
Right, stack rank.
Yeah, if I get the promotion, that means you don't. Therefore, I am financially incentivized to ensure my specific part of the project looks flawless, even if it means throwing your part of the project under the bus.
It's the classic toxic developer excuse. Well, my piece of the code compiled fine on my machine, so if the whole website crashed, that's a you problem.
Act Together as a mindset obliterates that excuse. It means the team genuinely understands that they succeed or fail as a single, unified organism. A front-end developer who designs the user interface must care deeply about the back-end developer's database struggles because they recognize that the customer doesn't care whose fault it is.
The customer only experiences one broken product.
Exactly. This mindset shifts the internal reward system away from individual heroics and toward collective triumph.
Next is the C, create incrementally. Subtitle, learn fast, deliver value often. This brings us all the way back to Oliver the dog at the crime scene, looking through his magnifying glass and asking the missing question, what did we learn? This feels like the direct antidote to the rigid recipe mentality we debated earlier.
It is the ultimate defense against the recipe trap. Think back to the chocolate cake. A recipe demands that you commit all your ingredients up front, put it in the oven, and wait until the very end of a long process to find out if it actually tastes good.
And if you messed up step 2, you're out of luck.
If it's terrible, you have wasted all your ingredients and time. Incremental creation says, instead of baking a massive 6-tier wedding cake in one go, let's bake a single cupcake this afternoon. Let's give it to the customer immediately and see if they even like the flavor of the frosting.
If the customer hates the frosting, you have only wasted one afternoon of work rather than 6 months of development time. You learn quickly and you adapt the recipe for tomorrow.
It fundamentally de-risks the entire business endeavor. You're no longer guessing what the market wants based on a 6-month-old planning document. You are actively testing what the market wants in real time.
Which flows seamlessly into the T. Think in outcomes. Subtitle, focus on results that matter. I want to offer an analogy for this one, building on the idea of navigating a complex system.
I love analogies, go for it.
Imagine you are taking your family on a road trip. Your ultimate goal, the desired outcome, is to reach a beach house on the coast before sunset. Your process for getting there is the GPS app on your phone, giving you rigid, turn-by-turn directions.
I like this setup. Where does the process break down?
Well, you are driving along, following the process perfectly, and suddenly you encounter a road that has been completely washed out by a flash flood. The GPS doesn't know about the flood. If you lack the Agile mindset and you are purely process-driven, you just drive your car right into the floodwaters because, well, that's what the process dictated.
Straight into the river.
You sink the car and ruin the vacation. But if you have the thinking outcomes mindset, you see the reality of the water, you ignore the GPS screaming at you to go straight, you turn the car around and you find a detour. The process failed you, but because you prioritize the outcome over the instructions, you still reach the beach house.
That is a phenomenal illustration of the concept. Driving into the floodwaters because the screen told you to is the exact corporate equivalent of spending millions of dollars to ship a useless software feature simply because it was on the initial project plan from January.
We've all seen that happen.
Think in Outcomes empowers the team with the permission to abandon a flawed process the moment they realize it is no longer serving the ultimate goal. It elevates human judgment and situational awareness above the mechanical checklist.
And finally, the second A closes out the framework loop. Always improve. Subtitle, reflect, adapt, and evolve. It is the humbling acknowledgement that you are never actually done building a mindset. You don't just check a box and say, we are agile now. It is an infinite game.
The moment your mindset calcifies into a permanent state, you begin to die as an organization. The technology landscape will change, your competitors will adapt, and your customers' expectations will evolve. Always. Improve ensures the team's nervous system remains porous and receptive to new information, rather than hardening into dogma.
Tucked away at the bottom of this vibrant I.M.P.A.C.T.A spread, Olga the Wizard leaves the reader with what the source calls a fairy wisdom spell. I want to read it aloud because it uses whimsical language to deliver a remarkably heavy payload of business truth.
It's one of my favorite parts.
It says, may curiosity open your mind, kindness guide your actions, courage strengthen your heart, and may every butterfly of thought create a better tomorrow. Now, if you walk into a traditional cutthroat Wall Street firm or a hyper-competitive tech startup, words like curiosity, kindness, and courage are usually dismissed out of hand as soft skills.
Oh, totally. They get scoffed at.
They are relegated to HR brochures, not discussed in the C-suite. But based on the deep dive we've just done, are these actually the hardest, most vital business tools a company can possess?
Calling them soft skills is a massive miscategorization. They are the only tools capable of navigating true uncertainty.
The only tools?
Yes. Demanding that employees type faster does not solve complex architectural software problems. Managing through fear does not generate groundbreaking innovation. It only generates compliance and hidden mistakes. Let's look at the mechanics of those three words. Curiosity is the necessary engine of create incrementally. You cannot learn fast if you are not deeply curious about why a user struggled with your product.
That's true.
Kindness is the structural foundation of people before process. It is the mechanism by which you build the trust that acts as your safety net during a server crash.
And what about courage? How does courage manifest in a software team?
Courage is what it takes for a junior developer to look at a senior vice president and say, the GPS is leading us into a flood. The current project plan is flawed, and we need to turn around.
Wow, that takes a lot of guts.
It takes immense courage to make value visible when you know your current draft of the work is messy and imperfect. It takes courage to prioritize the customer's outcome over adhering to a safe, familiar internal process. These are not soft skills. They are the structural rebar that holds up a resilient organization.
That is incredibly clarifying. So we have explored this robust framework. We understand the necessity of the mindset shift. We understand the mechanics of the fairy spell. But let's bring this down to earth for the listener.
Yeah, let's make it actionable.
Imagine someone listening to this right now on their morning commute. They are dreading walking into an office at 9 a.m. that operates exactly like the broken humming factory we described. How do they actually apply this knowledge? How do they avoid the miserable at work trap today? Our source material doesn't leave us hanging. It provides a very practical 5-step investigation process for the real world.
And we should note, this is designed to be a ritual of reflection, not just another grueling, mandatory hour-long meeting on the calendar.
Step 1 is read the story. Observe what is actually happening. Get out of your own head, put down your specific tasks for a moment, and look at the broader team dynamics.
Just take a breath and look around.
Step 2 is pause and think. Consider the questions and clues. Now, I have to ask about this one. If my boss measures my worth purely by how many digital tickets I close per hour, pausing feels like career suicide. How does a team actually execute pause and think in a culture that punishes pausing?
That is the reality for many workers. If the culture is hostile to reflection, you have to start with micropauses. You don't need to book a 2-day off-site retreat.
What does a micropause look like?
Pause and think can be a 5-minute block at the end of the day where you look at the ticket you just closed and ask yourself, did this actually help the user, or did I just appease my boss? It is about cultivating internal awareness before you try to change the external culture.
Step 3 is discuss and discover. Explore ideas in your team.
Notice the phrasing there. It is not dictate and enforce. It's discuss and discover. You are investigating the friction alongside your colleagues, not trying to impose a solution upon them.
Step 4 is learning takeaway. Take one small step toward better thinking today. Just one small step. You aren't trying to reorganize the entire corporate structure by noon. You're just trying to shift one thought pattern.
Keep it manageable.
And step 5 is case closed. For now, make an impasse-T. Acknowledge the progress made while accepting that the investigation into human behavior is an ongoing pursuit.
But the most actionable takeaway, the thing a listener can use in their very next meeting, is how the source material changes the literal questions we ask. Under the I.M.P.A.C.T.A investigation section, the text makes a profound pivot. It states that instead of asking, are we following Scrum, which is a purely mechanical, process-driven question, you must start asking mindset-driven questions.
The new questions provided are we creating value? Are we learning together? Are we improving our thinking? Are we solving the customer's problem? It completely reframes the entire conversational landscape of a meeting. If a project manager walks into a room and asks, are we following the process? Everyone instantly gets defensive. They prepare to justify their time cards. But if that same manager walks in and asks, what are we learning together about this roadblock? The tension drops. Everyone leans in to solve the puzzle.
It changes the posture of everyone in the room. You shift the dynamic from a group of auditors looking for compliance failures to a group of investigators looking for hidden value. You join forces against the problem rather than turning against each other over arbitrary rules.
And that profound shift in posture brings us to the ultimate promise of this entire framework. It's stamped right there on the final page of the investigation. The investigator's promise. Life is too short to be miserable at work. Bringing all this dense corporate jargon down to this very raw, human, emotional level. It changes the stakes of why Agile even matters, doesn't it?
It elevates the stakes entirely. We spend a third of our waking lives, often more, at our jobs. If an organizational structure is designed in a way that mechanically, inevitably generates misery, exhaustion, and frustration for the people inside it, It is a moral imperative to dismantle that structure.
A moral imperative, I agree.
The Agile philosophy was never supposed to be a clever new way to squeeze 5% more productivity out of miserable, burnt-out developers. It was supposed to be a philosophy that liberated human potential. It was meant to make collaborative work meaningful, engaging, and genuinely impactful.
We have covered an immense amount of ground today, untangling a very complex web. We started by dismantling the myth that Agile is just sticky notes and stand-up meetings, the expensive marathon gear worn by someone sitting on the couch.
Right, the artifacts versus the execution?
We discovered the inherent danger of the recipe trap, realizing that while a recipe works for baking a cake in a controlled oven, it is disastrous for navigating the unpredictable, complex systems of modern business.
We witnessed the magical reveal that a process only dictates what your hands do. But a true Agile mindset transforms how your brain perceives the problem.
And we tracked the causal loop of how that transformed thinking cascades into new behaviors, which ultimately build extraordinary, resilient teams. We took a deep dive into the I.M.P.A.C.T.A framework, understanding it as a human behavior model rather than a software pipeline.
It's all about the people.
We explored how to build empathy for a distant customer, the vulnerability required to make messy work visible, and why a safety net of trust must be put before rigid process during a crisis. We discussed acting as a unified organism, baking the incremental cupcake instead of the 6-month wedding cake, prioritizing the beach house outcome over the broken GPS process, and committing to the infinite game of always improving.
It really is a complete foundational reframing of how human beings can collaborate on complex problems without driving each other insane.
It is. But before we wrap up this investigation, I want to leave the listener with a final, provocative thought to mull over. Something that builds on the foundation Olga, Oliver, and Gordon have laid out for us.
I am intrigued. Where does this lead us?
We've spent the last hour talking extensively about how rigid processes, the literal coding, the automated testing, the moving of digital tickets from column A to column B, only tell us what to do. And if we look at the rapid advancement of technology right now, specifically with the explosion of generative artificial intelligence, we know that AI is becoming incredibly, almost terrifyingly good at following rigid processes.
Oh, for sure.
An AI agent can write the boilerplate code. An AI can run the QA tests. An AI can theoretically manage the Kanban board and optimize the schedule better than any human project manager.
That is an undeniable reality. The mechanical execution of knowledge work is rapidly being automated.
So if we follow that trajectory, and automation takes over the entire process side of software delivery, what happens to the human beings left in the office? Well, possessing this deeply human-centric Agile mindset, the curiosity to ask why a user is frustrated, the deep empathy to truly understand another human's pain, the courage to look at a failing trajectory and speak truth to power, will these soon be the only skills left that actually hold any economic value?
That is a profound question.
If AI becomes the ultimate flawless rule follower, maybe our only viable future is being the ultimate creative, empathetic thinkers.
Consider the implications of that shift. If the process is entirely automated by machines, the human mindset becomes the sole differentiator between a successful company and a bankrupt one. Olga's very wisdom spell, curiosity, kindness, and courage, transitions from being a nice sentiment on a comic book page to being the absolute core curriculum for human survival in the future of work.
If you're listening to this on your commute right now, think about your 10 a.m. meeting today. Are you walking into that room as an auditor to check boxes, or as an investigator using curiosity and courage to discover real value? It is something to seriously think about the next time you find yourself sitting in a soul-crushing status update.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the case of the missing Agile mindset. We appreciate you investigating the murky waters alongside us. And if you enjoyed this journey through corporate diagnostics, be sure to keep an eye out for our next exploration. At the very end of our source material, the creators dropped a tease for their next mystery, and the title alone is fantastic. It's called The Case of the Busy Team That Delivered Nothing.
Oh, I think every single person listening has been trapped on that specific team at least once in their career.
I know, I certainly have.
Yeah.
So the next time you feel like something is fundamentally invisibly broken at work, don't just look for a jagged line on a corporate X-ray. Look a little deeper. Look at the mindset. We will see you next time.